War has always demanded sacrifice, but history rarely remembers the women who paid its highest costs. Their courage was dismissed, their pain was ignored, their names were pushed far into the shadows. Yet decades after the Second World War, 8 extraordinary women stand out, not because they sought recognition, but because their stories refused to die. This is a documentary about the fighters, spies, rebels, inventors, and dreamers whose strength shaped battles far beyond the front line. Each of them survived unthinkable trials. Each of them changed the world in a way history almost erased. Today, we bring their stories back into the light. When Japan invaded China in 1937, a young woman named Cheng Ben-hua stepped into the resistance with unwavering resolve. Moments before she was executed, a Japanese photographer captured an image that would become one of the most iconic symbols of Chinese defiance. In it, Cheng Ben-hua stands with her hands bound, her head lifted, a faint smile on her face, staring directly into the camera, into the face of death itself. Her captors had filmed her final hours, her arrest, her imprisonment, and the brutal assaults she endured. She was repeatedly subjected to horrific violence, yet she never surrendered, never begged, never broke. That final photograph became her legacy, so powerful that a 5-meter statue now stands in Nanjing honoring her courage. It stands in the same city where Japanese forces massacred at least 300,000 civilians. Ben-hua was only 24 when she was killed in 1938, a year before the war officially began in Europe, though China had already been bleeding for years. A Chinese historian later said, "Among millions who died, few deserve remembrance as deeply as Cheng Ben-hua, a figure impossible to forget." Noor Inayat Khan, the princess who became a spy. Noor Inayat Khan was born into royalty, a descendant of Tipu Sultan. Yet she chose a path far from palaces. Born in Moscow to an Indian father and American mother, raised in Paris, Noor became one of Britain's most daring undercover agents during World War II. Her fluency in languages opened the door to the Special Operations Executive, Britain's secret sabotage unit. She parachuted into Nazi-occupied France as the first female radio operator ever sent into the field. It was one of the most dangerous roles in the entire resistance network. She constantly changed safe houses, moving like a shadow across Paris, staying only steps ahead of the Gestapo. But eventually, they caught her. She was interrogated, tortured, beaten, and still, she gave the Nazis nothing. They only knew her by her code name, Madeline. They didn't even know she was Indian. In September 1944, she and 3 other female agents were taken to the Dachau concentration camp. On the morning of September 13th, they were executed. Britain awarded her the George Cross. France honored her with the Croix de Guerre. A memorial stands in her name in London. The author of Spy Princess wrote, "She inspires people even today, not just for her bravery, but for the ideals she lived and died for." Noor believed in peace, yet she gave her life to stop fascism. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, Lady Death. Lyudmila Pavlichenko became one of the most lethal snipers in recorded history. When Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, she joined the fight and achieved 309 confirmed kills. Many were German snipers, expert marksmen who entered a deadly duel with her and lost. During the sieges of Sevastopol and Odessa, her precision earned her a chilling nickname, Lady Death. Though the Germans failed to shoot her, a mortar blast wounded her. She recovered, but Soviet command pulled her from combat and used her fame to rally support worldwide. She traveled the globe, speaking as a representative of the Red Army, even meeting U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt. Despite receiving the Gold Star Hero Award, her achievements were later pushed out of Soviet narratives that preferred celebrating male soldiers. It is astonishing how a woman of her skill was erased. Soviet war memory had no room for female heroes. But history never completely forgot the woman the Nazis feared most. Nancy Wake, the White Mouse. Adventurous, fast-paced, Nancy Wake lived a life that sounded like fiction. A deadly fighter, a bold lover, an unstoppable operative, and a woman who drank and laughed fearlessly. Born in New Zealand, raised in Australia, she ran away at 16 and landed in France as a journalist after claiming she understood ancient Egyptian writing. She married Henry Fiocca, a wealthy French industrialist. When Germany invaded France, she was living in Marseille. Nancy joined the French resistance, helping Allied pilots escape into Spain. As the Gestapo closed in, she fled to Britain, but her husband was arrested, tortured, and killed for refusing to betray her. Determined to continue fighting, Nancy parachuted back into France as an SOE agent. She took part in high-risk missions and once claimed she killed a German soldier with her bare hands, a judo move she had learned in SOE training. During one battle, coded radio messages were lost. Nancy cycled 500 kilometers through enemy territory to retrieve replacements, completing the journey in just 3 grueling days. She often used elegance as a disguise, dressing up to charm German soldiers and gather intelligence. "A little powder, a little wine," she said, "and I'd glide right past them." The Germans called her the White Mouse because she escaped every trap, a nickname she later used as the title of her memoir. Nancy Wake received multiple military honors. She died in 2011 at age 98, her ashes scattered in France as she had wished. Jean Weil, reporter, spy, politician. Jean Weil was born in the Republic of Congo but grew up in Paris. When the war began, she was a journalist, but she quickly stepped into a far more dangerous role. She fled Paris and joined the resistance in southern France, a region controlled by a puppet government rather than the full German occupation. She tracked German troop movements and relayed vital intelligence to the Allies. In January 1943, she was arrested and charged with treason, but her captors failed to decode her records. Her encryption was so complex that experienced officers could not break it. She was sent first to a concentration camp and later to a women's prison, from which she either escaped or was quietly released. Jean Weil survived the war, and in 1947, she became a member of the French Senate, one of the few resistance women to rise to political leadership afterward. Hedy Lamarr, the actress who changed technology. Hedy Lamarr was known as one of Hollywood's most glamorous stars, but behind the beauty was a brilliant mind. Born Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler in Austria to a wealthy Jewish family, she first married an arms manufacturer who forced her to abandon acting and entertain his business associates, many of whom were Nazi officials. Hedy escaped the marriage, fleeing through Paris and eventually reaching London. There, she met MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer, who brought her to Hollywood and introduced her as the most beautiful woman in the world. She acted in over 30 films, but her greatest contribution was not on the screen. Hedy co-invented a frequency-hopping system that prevented enemy forces from jamming Allied torpedo signals. Her invention became a foundation for modern Bluetooth and Wi-Fi technology, a Hollywood star who quietly shaped the wireless world we live in today. Maya Ai, the fighter who carried a sword and poison. Before Japan reached Burma during World War II, Maya Ai was already fighting for independence from British rule. She joined resistance forces during the war, always carrying 2 things, a sword and a vial of poison, determined never to be taken alive. In 1944, she trekked across mountains and enemy territory to reach British-held India and join the fight against Japanese troops. When she was injured along the way, she treated herself, refusing all help from accompanying men. In India, she helped produce pamphlets that were dropped over Burma, documenting Japanese atrocities. After giving birth to her first son, she planned to return to Burma, but gave her plane seat to another fighter. She herself returned only after the war ended in October 1945. Even after foreign powers left, her struggle continued. She turned her resistance toward Burma's military junta, fighting oppression long after the war was over. Rasuna Said, the Lioness of Indonesia. Rasuna Said stands apart from many wartime heroines because her fight was not directed at Japan. Her true enemy was the Dutch colonial system ruling Indonesia. She entered politics young, forming the Indonesian Muslim Association while barely in her 20s. Her movement blended religion and nationalism, challenging the European rulers who tried to silence her. A biographer described her as a lightning bolt of a speaker, fierce, sharp, unafraid. Her criticism of the Dutch was so bold that she was repeatedly targeted. At one point, she was jailed for 14 months. When Japan invaded Indonesia in 1942, Rasuna joined a pro-Japanese organization, but continued pushing for full independence. After Japan's defeat, Indonesia faced another wave of conflict as the Dutch attempted to reclaim control, backed initially by Britain. This triggered 4 violent years of war. Indonesia finally secured sovereignty in 1949. Rasuna Said played a pivotal role in this fight and later became a strong advocate for women's education and representation. Today, she is honored as a national hero, one of the few women to receive that distinction. 8 women, 8 lives at the edges of war. History may overlook women, but it cannot erase those who stand, those who fight. Thank you for watching. This is US Mag.